in the late 80s. I lived there for a
What
little
about you,
bit.
Chris? Do you think that you should have publicly financed elections and use tax dollars to pay for campaigns, or is that screwed up? You're kind of libertarian. What do you think?
I really shouldn't be the one talking about this because the situation here is very different from the States. You know, you cannot compare countries. All the taxpayers' money who goes into these election campaigns are, you know, pumped up. They spend a way lot more than they say they spend, and they spend it on really useless shit. And whenever I see that crap on buses, when we don't have, you know, like basic stuff, you know, healthcare related and social service related, I really hate this idea. So I kind of have a bias against this, just because, you know, the politicians here are so corrupted and they spend so much money on nothing, and the people here are really poor. So I'm not like the best person to be asked.
I want to ask you one more thing anyway, real quick.
You didn't have me talk. I started talking. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead. Yeah, you're doc now. Go ahead for it.
Oh, I wanted to give you a nice little story about Clint Eastwood. This is perfect with the influence that's required, even on a local level. Now, he was mayor of Carmel in the late 80s. I lived there for a little bit, and they have a no growth policy. It's a small little town. It's 5,000 people, and they don't want anything commercial, anything more commercial going up. Well, he wanted a small mall that he was going to build, and the zoning board wouldn't clear it. So he ran for mayor, and once he won, because of his celebrity, he fired everyone on the zoning board and put his own people in. Well, they approved his they approved him for the commercial code to put the mall in. He put his mall up and ran for mayor and kept his, you know, his tenure as mayor for another year, and then let somebody else run. But he only did it to get zoning for his his building he wanted up. And I think you know, at the time, mayor paid about 25 grand, and of course he was probably worth at least, if not tens of millions, hundreds of millions.
You know, the thing I would like to see here, I'm not sure, sorry about the dogs, if it would work everywhere. If, I mean, the campaigns should be paid from their own pockets, you know, like the happy family commercials, advertisement that you see, you know, about how great of parents they are and how much good stuff they're gonna do for the city or the country or whatever. But I think that should be some general information about them that should be, you know, collected using taxpayers' money, but to be very unbiased, you know, to like have a set of questions like where do you stand, you know, with gay rights? What are your stance on the current healthcare industry here? What are your stance on this, on this, on this? And everybody could read that shit and, you know, see what are their general perspective on things. But to be, you know, like totally unbiased and to treat all of them equally, you know, to see how they stand on the same subjects. I mean, I think this would work best here as far as, you know, people information go, people to be informed about them.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm thinking. And you know, you could do it in ways like you could like submit questions, and they could have a certain amount of time to answer the questions. You know, in written answers or videos or whatever, and then only release their answers all at once. You know what I mean? So they can't copy each other's answers or this or that. And then yeah, it's all in one place, and people can go peruse it and force them to answer the question. You know, do you believe in evolution? Do you, you know, direct questions and just see how honestly they answer, you know, and how creatively they answer, and it'll tell people a lot about who they are.
Yeah, but the big ass billboards with them and their dog and their, you know, children and the signs on buses and all that crap, I have no use for that. I really hate that. But anyway, you were about to ask me something, Piero?
And now I forget what it was. It'll come to me in a minute. Let me just leave the hand up and somebody else can talk while I remember.
Well, that's really lame. Let me just leave the hand off. What the fuck? Come on. Oh, shit. Somebody else talk. So they could use that as evidence against Gary. Look,
I remember, Gary, stop mocking.
Gary ignoring the hand.
No, what I was going to say is that I think public financing, and one reason, because I kind of felt like, why should they do such bullshit, and especially if you public finance these $100 million campaigns, but that's why it'd be good to start at the county where, it's cost $300,000, and by the way, we have like $1.5 million in a state fund where people on their state taxes put money into it, and they've never had a way to spend it, so we're not even really spending money, so that was a nice part about this one. But anyway, if you have public funds on the election campaigns, I think that's the way you'll get regulation on it a little bit on how they spend those funds. Because when it's people's private funds, of course, they can just make with the dog and decide that, hey, I'm having the kids, the fake kids. There's examples where people hire kids. They don't have kids. There's one on this political blog recently. Make it look like they've got kids. You could start to have, hey, if you take public financing, then you have to do this debate. Then you have to answer a questionnaire that's created in this particular way, ideally with people, rating questions to the top 100 questions, and so on and so forth. I think, without even stopping them from doing the silly stuff, you could focus them on serious stuff, and then if people use the serious stuff to vote, they'd actually focus on the serious stuff all the time, even with any discretionary funds and whatnot.
Yeah, I just think it makes sense not to let them have control over the money. So subsidize the infrastructure of campaigning and subsidize the positive parts of the campaign, which are the debates and any kind of arenas where the candidates have to confront each other's politics. And yes, subsidize that part and, let them, it's a free country, so it's really hard to regulate this free speech thing and say, you can't buy speech with money. We just have to create a mechanism that makes money irrelevant. Where money's not going to matter because we have a mechanism. We have an arena where we can watch them do their competing thing, their Thunderdome thing, and
I've got a question about that, Gary. In the States, isn't it the case that there's fixed election dates, like something stupid like 2 years between congressmen's elections? It seems to me that just by virtue of that they're in constant electioneering mode, and that they're gonna shape-shift like crazy to whatever people want them to do. So why does it even matter if you ask them what their position on things are, if they're naturally self-interested and they're just gonna skew their position on things based on what's going to win them votes? I don't even see how this kind of questioning would even have an effect,
I don't see how good
it is. Gary, before you answer,
it has 7-year terms, and what do we get for that? We get shit. So, why have these guys locked in there for, 5 years? 5 years. That's too long. So, but it doesn't, your whole argument, that premise of that they're all that wishy-washy, I think is bullshit anyway. They're all the same. They're politicians. They're party controlled. They're special interest controlled. Their special interests rarely change. So I don't think it's that. They're just saying whatever the public wants to hear in any one year. Well, what's the difference between saying what the public wants to hear every year or saying what the public wants to hear every 5 years? It's the same shit. It's the same crap.
Yeah, the thing is here, I like the 2, 4, and 6 year kind of terms. I think there's a difference in the problem exactly. Well, again, okay, well, just to stay.
Well, the only thing, like, I come from Canada, up here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, wait, because so first of all, I also was in the previous part of this conversation, though I think this tangent relates, and that's fine. But the previous part, I wanted to say that to Gary, and in response to what you said, I still think publicly financed elections are a little bit of an iffy thing. Kind of like affirmative action. I believe you need it for a time, but there's something, it is a discriminatory reverse, or there's something issue there where once it does its work, you're going to have to move it away. The end goal for elections is totally a couple C-SPAN type networks, requirements to do debates in these forums, and you shouldn't cost anything to run for office. There should be a public infrastructure way to get your ideas out there. And if we decide it should involve debates or position papers or platforms or all of the above, you file those things and you do it. And I think and then to the apropos point, if you do something like that, the problem with 2-year cycles is that if you do the math of how much it takes to get into Congress and how many hours there are in 2 years, you find out they've got to work like 60-hour weeks just to get people to give them goddamn money. And that if you ask the representatives, that is what they do. And you can't even delegate it really because these people want to hear from the officer. So they have no time to think about the law. They just think about that. If they get a public finance, then they might campaign for 2 years, but they won't actually think about it 24/7, because just right now they're not thinking about it 24/7. They're thinking about how do they get the money to buy the shit that they thought they needed for their strategy. So they're only going to think, 3 months out of 2 years, even if it's kind of always in their head. And so, I don't think it's the time period. I agree with Gary on the fact that it's the same bullshit at all the time periods, though the math is really sick at 2 years. They have no time to do anything but raise money.
Yeah, well, again, I think the money thing is partly an illusion. The congressman here, it's an 80% Republican district. He never has any real competition. He always spends a big pile of money. Part of that, I think, is just people feeding off of the system. This is another way of funneling money to the family members because they're all paid employees of the campaign, and all this other crap that goes on. So some of it just seems a big fraud to me. That the campaign isn't really a campaign to actually get elected. It's just about spending money on getting elected. It's part of the business of being a congressman is making money on getting elected. The process of running an election. They're paid consultants and all this other kind of crap. Yeah, there's a lot of rackets, but whatever. I still think if you have a basic infrastructure, then that's all you can do is create a mechanism that
the way it
allows
works
the cream to come to the top. Yeah, well, the way it works in Canada is bullshit anyway. You got a parliamentary system, isn't any fucking better anyway. You got multi-parties, coalition governments. It's all still the same kind of compromise crap.
Well, like the way it works up here in Canada, it's I think people give the money to the party first of all, and there's a cap. There's something like a $3,000 cap in which an individual can give to a party, and after that you're not allowed to give anything more. And then on top of that, it's something like $1 for every vote you won in the last election, your party will get the next time. But that might only be exclusive to parliamentary systems, because I know that in the States you guys are pretty, Democrats are voting with Republicans all the time and Republicans with Democrats and everything. And, maybe the problem is that people are too independent.
Well, the difference
if they had
is
some, party whip there to...
If you had a country of 300 million people, maybe it'd be different too. Built out of a lot of different kinds of demographics, like America. So, that's part of the equation here. But yet, parliamentary systems to me are all failed. It's a party system. You're so locked in to the politics. And look what happened in England. You get fucked. The people basically got fucked. Okay, the third party basically decided, no, even though you thought you were voting liberal, no, you voted Tory, because we're going to vote with the Tories. So, a bunch of people basically just had their will completely ignored by a little third party that decided to change colors.